morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. We are thrilled to be able to offer this session today. We have a very special guest with us, but before we introduce her, I'll introduce myself. My name is Michelle Armstrong. I am the Director of EdTech Team Canada, based out of Calgary. I'll give you a little bit more information about EdTech Team in just a moment, but before I do, I have to introduce the wizard behind this YouTube live stream. We've got Danny Leeming here running the show behind the scenes. Thank you, Danny, for that. Danny's probably gonna turn off his camera and just be in the background, but this would not be possible without the magic of the live stream YouTube that you created, Danny. So thank you so much for that.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to shut myself off now.
Right. Okay. Well, we need to just start with a little bit of background information on our virtual learning series, Teaching Online. The link at the bottom there, edtech.team/CanadaBLS. That's going to get you to our website that gives you more information about what we've been doing over the past week and a half here in Canada. Sandra, can you just pop to the next slide for me?
Yes.
Thank you. So, this wouldn't also be possible without Google Canada, Google for Education. We have been able to offer free professional development to educators all across our country. We have worked with over 1,000 educators in a week and a half, and we've got space for many, many more coming up soon. But it's the silver lining of what's happening with us right now is we can still connect with educators and help them navigate this wild ride that we're on. Next slide, Sandra, please. This just in, we are also working with Microsoft Education Canada, hoping to be able to offer similar workshops for those of you working in O365 and Microsoft environments. So stay tuned for more information about that. In fact, we're going to be back later tonight with Sandra, where Sandra is going to give us some tips and pointers for that Microsoft environment as well. But more information coming soon. Next slide, Sandra. If you want to be kept in the loop on all that is going on with EdTech Team, you can follow us on social at EdTech Team Can, and of course the hashtag virtual learning series. We are EdTech Team. We have been providing professional development to Canadian educators since 2013. We are a global organization providing professional development all over the world, but we are thrilled to be able to still provide that support virtually to educators all across Canada. And this is our special guest edition where we are going to learn from the truly amazing Miss Sandra Chow. And I'm just going to leave it at that, turn it over to her to start with her presentation. So thank you, Sandra.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra, and I'll introduce a little bit more about myself in a moment. But before I do that, I'd love to get to know who's in the audience. So if we can start with some intro.
And now I'm not sure if that's on my end that we had a little Wi-Fi issue. I'm suspecting that that is over on Sandra's end. So I'm just going to take over from here. What Sandra wants us to do, so in the chat, she wants to know just who are you, where are you teaching from? Just introduce yourself in the chat so we can get to know who you are. Danny, do you mind just posting in the chat here if you can still hear me? I am guessing this is me. All right, well, you know what we're doing right now is we are modeling what happens when technology fails. And so we're going to wait for Sandra to rejoin. We're certain that she's behind the scenes trying to get herself to rejoin. But let's go ahead and hopefully in that chat, you were telling us who you are. And Sandra, yay!
I'm
You're
going to go back to this computer instead.
It's totally fine, Sandra. You know what? We've been doing this all week, and all week we've had technical issues, and all week we've just had to approach them with a smile because that's just the way it happens. So I absolutely love to see that smile on your face. And let shall we just dive back in where you left off?
Sounds good. So if everyone can just share in the chat as I try to log in with my other computer, just where you're from. I'd love to just get an idea of where everybody is at, and helps me to understand a little bit of your background as I share a little bit about my background as well. So please go ahead. And as you go ahead and do that, I'll share a little bit more about myself. My name is Sandra Chow, and I'm so excited to be with all of you because, like all of you, I'm from Canada, and even though currently I'm in Beijing, my heart is definitely with all of you. I started my career with the Toronto District School Board, and spent 18 years there, and for a brief time also went to Taiwan and taught there. And while I was in Taiwan, it was actually during the H1N1 um, virus period, and there was a little bit of an epidemic there as well. And I remember very, very vividly how our school was preparing for a pandemic situation during that time, and how things kind of come around and prepare you for the future. And here I am now working in Beijing, where I'm able to take some of the learning from Taiwan into the situation as well. I went back to Toronto and went back to TDSB, and then also spent some time at TVO, where I was an instructional liaison, maybe working with some of you in the past as well. And currently I'm at Keystone Academy, where my role is as the Director of Innovation and Digital Learning. And a big part of what I do is working with the staff, training them, coaching, making sure our infrastructure is appropriate and sound, so that I can move forward and support the staff. And I'm also, like some of you, a parent, and I have 3 kids who are currently undergoing online learning as well. So I have a little one right here who should be in bed and is currently beside me. Not sure why, but it is 11 p.m. here in Beijing, and here he is. So that's me as well. So as you're sharing, I'm going to share a little bit of our COVID-19 learning journey as a school. If you look at the calendar, you can see.
And you know what? I just want to jump in here. Let's see your gorgeous son. That's another reality of this world that we're all in, and we have our coworkers beside us coming to help, and sometimes we feel worried about how to deal with that. But the reality is, like, let's embrace this time with our family. So, hi, little Win.
Say hi.
Hi.
Okay, you go to bed, and mommy will come in later. Okay. Okay, so you go on the bunk bed. Okay, thank you. All right. So, okay, do that. So, a little bit about our journey. During our time, actually very similar to many of you, as you were going through your March break or spring break, we were going through our Chinese New Year break. And you can see right here, right after Christmas break, we actually have 2 weeks of Chinese New Year. And Chinese New Year varies depending on the year, and it just happened to be really close to Christmas this year. And about the 28th, 29th, and 30th was when things started getting really bad here in China. And I was actually in Philippines with my family on a beach and relaxing. And a friend of mine from another school texted me and said, "Hey, things are getting bad. Do you guys have an online learning plan?" And I was thinking to myself, well, no, I don't, but that's a great idea. And so, pretty much around that time is when we started planning out our online learning strategy. And it happened really quickly. Our leadership got on to video conference, met together. I happened to be in a hotel, and I was just working away while my kids were playing on the beach. And then we were just trying to even decide whether to go back to Beijing or not. So you can see the time was really chaotic, and there was just a lot of factors that we were trying to play. All my colleagues were all over the world, some of them in Australia, some of them in North America, some of them all throughout Asia Pacific. And then we decided that we would come and start on the week as soon as we came back, which was supposed to be the third. But we actually, as a leadership team, decided that we wouldn't start until the fifth, so that our staff would have time to train as well as to plan their lessons before online learning started. So that was pretty much how we started. We were very much in this firefighting mode, and things were very, very hectic and stressful. A lot of unknowns. We literally thought things would last for 2 weeks. And here we are, April 2nd, having done 8 weeks of online learning, and we're currently on our spring break. And we really have no idea when this will all end, but we are still at it, and really thankful for this little bit of respite to relax and regroup before coming on strong again for what we're calling our new phase of online learning, where we're really rethinking a lot of what we're doing. So that's a little bit of our journey. And as we before I move into the next phase of the presentation, I really like to I like showing this infographic that Jennifer Wathel from Hong Kong put up. It really helped to put into perspective how we were feeling and what our situation was like. And as we go into it deeper and deeper, it just is such a reality for us. So, in that beginning stage, we were very much in this firefighting stage. We're surviving, and we were trying to figure out what digital tools we needed, what LMS we would use, what was our communication strategy with each other, as well as with our students and with our teachers. And at the same time, I was coordinating with other um, directors and other coordinators of educational technology throughout this region, because we were all in the same boat and trying to see, are you guys using this plan? And it ranged from people having already a full LMS and just continuing on business as usual. I have a friend in Macau, also a Google innovator, and Mel Varga, and he was like, "Oh, we're just going to continue with our Google Classroom because they have Google." And we were just trying to figure out what would go well. And so, and then we also had some who were in Hong Kong who were very tech savvy as a school, but decided they would just go with email as their communication tool with their staff. Um, so we kind of stuck with what we had as our foundation, and decided that we would start with this asynchronous model. Asynchronous meaning that the learning would be shared with our students, and they could do it on their own time, but we would, as teachers and educators, provide the lessons to the students as on a daily basis. And we would constantly provide updates to the teachers as well as parents and students as we got them. And I mean, even to this day, we're still waiting on what the government tells us every day, and things change. We make plans and things would change. So slowly, as days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, we started to get into a groove, and we started to get a stride. And We provided training for our staff, and they were starting to feel more comfortable. And that's when they started to move into instructional videos, and connecting with their students that way, still in a very much asynchronous model. And then again, as we got more comfortable, we started to think about the tools in a more meaningful way. And I'll dive more into that later, but um, I would say as a school, 8 weeks in now, are we at this thrive stage where we're feeling like, okay, we can think about beyond just the tools now. We can really think about how we're going to teach it effectively, starting to think about assessments. And maybe a few of our teachers are at this arrive stage where they're using asynchronous as well as synchronous teaching, where they're doing live video conferencing with their students, um, and doing quite a good balance between the two. But to be honest, we still have some teachers who are in this firefighting stage and still surviving because they were on Chinese New Year break and they were stuck wherever they were, and they were using different tools that not necessarily the tools that they have at school. Their internet is not always as strong as what we have at school. As you can see, I just got kicked off as well, and things just change so often. And so as you guys are moving into this online learning stage, I'd love to hear about where you're at. I think it's very important to have a pulse. And what I loved about that infographic was it gives the language of where you're at and knowing yourself in a way that is applicable to this situation that we're in. So I'd love to hear where you're at. And we're going to use a tool called Mentimeter. So all you need to do using either a phone or a computer, just go to www.menti.com and enter the code 951014. So please go ahead and do that. And I'm going to just check in on everyone. And as you go to Menti, I'm just going to put this code back up. Just want to check that you guys are all still there. Go ahead and type in where you feel you're at. What stage of e-learning are you in? And this is a really great tool. It's absolutely free, and you have unlimited presentations. But in the free mode, you only get 2 slides per presentation, and I find that's usually plenty for what I use. If I need more, I create more presentations. But there's multiple choice, there's graphs, there's word clouds, but this is a new one called Dots. I love it, and you can see the number of participants who are answering. I love that there are people who are already on Thrive. That's amazing. And it works really well. I've used this often with my parent sessions because it's so easy. With students, it's very easy to get them working through there. Wow, we have one person already on Arrive. How awesome is that? And it works really quickly. It's great if you have a large group of people as well. And the data saves later on as well. So whenever you do a polling with your group that you're in, this information saves and continues on. So it's a really fantastic tool. Some of it, I guess they recalibrated, but for some of you who might have forgotten, I can also show the image again. So just so you remember, are you in Survive, Strive, Thrive, Arrive? And it gives you a really great visual of where everybody is at. And it makes total sense that many of you are at the survive stage right now because you're in that beginning. You're trying to figure things out. I think some of you, the province just told you that you're going on online learning, and some of you are still waiting. And I completely understand that feeling that you don't know what's going to happen next. And that's very normal. I'm going to go to the next slide. And what I love now is to hear about, as you're moving into online learning, what are some challenges you are anticipating that you're going to encounter in this e-learning journey? I know when I started, some of the things as as the director, I do a lot of training. So some of the things I was anticipating was a lot of staff not knowing what to do. I was also anticipating that my students didn't all have the technology that they needed. Um, some of it was how are we going to get our teachers back? That was some of it. Are our teachers going to come back to China? So again, you can see this tool is really fantastic. You can see the thinking that people are having, internet issues for sure, overstressing students with too much schoolwork, and that is completely true, and that still continues to be the case for us 8 weeks into it. Low student engagement, that's another really great point. We have a caring plan where we actually keep attendance and try to keep track of how many students are actually engaged. Working with 3 kids, I understand that feeling. My little one finally went to bed. Assessments is definitely something we actually were just at the point of a first semester report cards when we were starting online learning, and we rolled them out. But now, going into quarter 3, trying to figure out what to do report cards, we made the decision that we would scale down our report card. So, I mean, we're one school, but in an entire district, how do you scale down your report cards? That's a lot to think about. Yeah, how do students present their thinking, and how do you co-teach with another educator? Actually, with digital learning, it's a lot easier to interact. But if you're not face to face, how do you collaborate? How do you work with each other? Oh yeah, our design teachers feel the same way. Those hands-on um, courses, how do you get your students to be able to do visual arts, to do design, completely understand? So these are all great issues, and these are things that I think are really important to think about. I'm going to share these results with Michelle afterwards, and these are some things that she's definitely going to be working through to think about how she, as a team, they're going to be supporting you in some of these things. But I hope this also is releasing for some of you as you write down some of these thoughts, and maybe as you look at other people's thoughts as well, you might be saying, "Oh yeah, I never thought of that." And just like my friend Clint, who told me about, asked me if I planned an online learning, had an online learning plan. Sometimes just speaking it out helps you to trigger, oh yeah, I need to think about that. And just thinking about it goes a long way. So this is called Mentimeter. I'm just going to show you the back end of it so you have an idea. So you can see there's speech bubbles and all that, and there's results. And all of this I can download afterwards and save. The free version, as I said, only allows for 2 slides, but you have unlimited presentation. And this is just a fantastic tool that I highly recommend to be able to be used with your class. So moving on, I'm going to share a little bit about some lessons learned. And kind of like Sound of Music, we're going to start at the very beginning with these lessons learned. I wish I had some of these thoughts early on, so that we could have avoided some of the challenges earlier. And I hope that some of these lessons can support you as well. But I recently posted an article on ISTE, and I hope it can be helpful to all of you. But as I was writing this article, I was trying to distill it down to what are the most important things that I think people should know as they think about opening school in an online learning environment, especially in a crisis situation. And I mean, right now, this is COVID-19, but if we think about it, we actually have a lot of these kind of situations that happen sometimes. Some of it is weather related, um, school closing because of snow, or sometimes it blackouts, or maybe your facility is shut down for some reason and you have to close for a week. And I would say in the past, we could say, oh, yeah, let's just close school for the week. But with the availability of digital technology that we have, and especially, I think the lemonade that comes out of the lemon of COVID 19 is we're going to be more ready than ever to be able to continue school in the future when we have these kind of crisis situations, or 1 week situations where we cannot go to school. And I think um, if we have these situations, what are some things we have to remember? And when I kind of distilled it down, I think there's three things that I think are really important. The first one is your purpose. It seems really simple, but I know, and for those who are in Ontario, we're very much um, conditioned to think about our learning goals. But I think it comes back more deeper than that. What is your goal as a teacher? What is your goal as a school? And I think in crisis situations, it's very easy to forget that because we're just trying to push things out there. We're just trying to get things out there. And we forget about our learners. We forget about um, uh, what we really want to happen in the classroom. And so for our school, our goals as a school is very much based on values and very much based on character. We have bilingual education that's really important to us. And so as we started to get deeper into our online learning, we kind of had to rethink that. We had to go back to, oh, yeah, what is our first purpose when it comes down to it? And I think it's easy to forget that. And I think if you start with that, then everything will come into place. Decisions about your platform, decisions about how you're going to communicate with your staff, how you're going to communicate with your students will come back to the heart of who you are. And so I think first start with being very purpose driven. Remember who you are, as a teacher, as a school, as a district. Then the other thing I think to remember is to remember that simple is oftentimes better. Less is oftentimes more. And I put this garbage can image here because uh, I think we tend to go overboard with everything. But when you're online learning, everything takes longer. The internet speed uh, causes what was intended to be a 15-minute activity to take an hour to 2 hours because your students or the teachers are just loading the video that they're trying to share with whoever it might be. Um, we anticipate things to be really simple, but actually is very complicated because a student needs to figure out how to use one application, then put it into another application, then upload it into the application. And oh, I don't have that material. We have to go buy that material. And oh, I have to talk to my parents. But my parents are teaching are teaching right now or at work right now, and I can't talk to them until an hour later because they're in a conference call. And so there's just so much going on in the home, and just practice simplicity. Sometimes, if the kids are just doing less, they're actually able to enjoy the activity more. They're able to dive deeper into the lesson a lot more, and they're able to learn a lot more. And it's a lot less stress for you as a teacher if you don't try to put in all these bells and whistles and be the super teacher that you hope to be. Um, and so be kind to yourself and just be simple. Try to do things as with one platform, with one activity, and and just make sure that goes really well and you're successful. And then the last thing I think is really important is to remember to be kind. And before being kind to others, you first need to be very kind to yourself because it's very easy to feel like you have to do everything and you have to be perfect. And you're now not only teaching in front of your students, but you're teaching in front of your parents. And you don't have to be perfect. Everyone's scrambling right now. Everyone's trying to do their own thing. So just do the best that you can. Be kind to each other, and when you're communicating with each other, just have the best intention in mind and know that the other person probably has the best intention as well. So you don't need to be perfect, and know that other people's aren't going to be perfect either. And you need to practice a little bit of grace with that along the way. I'm just going to do a check just to make sure that everyone's still there. Are you there? Can you hear me, Michelle? Yeah? Okay.
I absolutely can, and it's just fabulous. I'm just thrilled to be able to learn from you, Sandra. Thank you so much again.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. So those are kind of the basic principles I wanted to share before we moved into the nuts and bolts of, okay, how do we make sure we get our school started? I think if you start with those three things in mind, then everything else will be okay. And if you have a chance, read the article. It's a little bit more detailed, but I just wanted to start with that. So we're going to move into the nuts and bolts of things now. And I think it's really important to remember that we're all on a learning journey. We're doing e-learning, and we didn't train to be e-learning teachers. We trained to be classroom teachers. And we're just put in this situation now where we're actually have to put everything online. And we just need to remember that as we're learning, we need to think about what we're doing. But as we think, we also have to remember that we're learning. So both of those are really important. So recently, my friends and I, so Clint, who was the person who called me up and said, "Hey, Sandra, do you have an online learning plan?" And Carrie Lee, who I started to grow really close to, and we've just been collaborating a lot together. A lot of people have been asking about what kind of training did you provide for staff, and we decided to put together this infographic to kind of share with all of you some of the things you need to think about as you're planning forward. And so I'm going to go through, starting from the bottom, some of the things you really need to think about, but all of these are important throughout. It's not like you start with core systems and you don't touch social emotional until 8 weeks in. That's not true at all. It's just that in the beginning, the core systems are more important and you have to deepen over time. So I'm going to walk through each of these right now. When you first start off and you're in that firefighting mode, how do you get people out of that firefighting mode? Well, the important thing is to make sure you're communicating well and you have everybody trained well on your core learning systems. And your core learning systems could be Google Classroom, or it could be another learning management system that you have already at your school. I know in Toronto District School Board, they have D2L. And Brightspace. So that might be what you need to make sure everybody knows how to use really, really well. The other thing is you want to make sure people are communicating with each other clearly and they have a means to collaborate with each other. So because teachers cannot be their own island at this point. So make sure everybody knows how to use Gmail very well. Make sure people know how to use Google Meet so that they can connect with each other and have calls just like we are right now, and share screens and plan with each other and share documents so that the lessons are ready and they're not just creating their own thing. They can actually communicate with each other. And then the other thing is, especially if you're a leader, how are you going to communicate your thinking with your staff and make sure that we're all on the same page? And this is where Google Sites is such an amazing tool, where as leaders, you can just put all that information in one place and communicate that out either to your teachers or teachers who can communicate that with your parents. And it's like a one-stop shop where people can go to for the latest information that they need. And if you have a bit.ly, make a short little URL shortener, and they'll be able to find it and go to that site, put it on their homepage, go to it all the time. But you need those core communication and learning systems set And that will help make sure people are out of that firefighting stage, because they'll feel like, oh, I have a foundation. I have my core processor in place, and I can move on. And and this is where it's important that, more important than ever, this relationship between parents, school, and teachers, um, supporting our learners. I mean, we've always had these kind of relationships, but these relationships are going to be even more important during this time, because in essence, our parents are our learning assistants or our co-teachers in many places, especially if they're primary school and elementary school. You need to rely on that parent support, and they need to understand how they can support their learners. Digital citizenship is no longer just a teacher to learner thing. Parents and school and teacher, we're all making sure that our students can be strong digital citizens and are practicing safe behavior online. And so this is another very core element in that piece. So in the beginning, make sure all of that is set up. Once that is set up, then you can move into, okay, what additional digital tools can we have? You don't want to inundate your teachers with all the digital tools, like, okay, let's bring in Flipgrid, and oh, let's bring in, I heard Loom is really cool, and bring in all these really cool tools that are all free because of COVID-19. We can't, your teachers might not be able to handle it, and your students won't be able to handle it, and they're just going to be confused. So once you have your core systems, then start bringing in the tools. You can train the teachers along the way, especially those who are your early adopters. Get them trained up so that they can help the other teachers along. But once you have that, then you can move into, what are other tools that we can bring in to enhance the learning and support what we already have. So this is when you might bring in other collaboration tools like Padlets, or you need a whiteboard. Awe app is an amazing whiteboard app. But you'll notice that this infographic that, again, that was created in collaboration with others, says China friendly. And um, you have to think of your own context. So I'm in China, and there's a lot of limitations in China where certain apps just don't work. And so we had to go through extensive testing just to find out, okay, well, which ones actually work in China. And that's just my context. But other things you need to think about is, well, what tools do your students have? What tools do your teachers have? Do they have Apple products? Do they have Microsoft products? Do they have Chromebooks? If they have Chromebooks, then you can't use something like Apple Keynote, or Apple Clips. Um, and so you have to think about what tools work for your students. You also need to think about the context of their age. Um, Older students might be able to handle more tools, and certain tools will work better for them. And whereas younger students, you might want something that is more colorful and more graphic oriented. So the tools go with the students and the context that you're in, and you need to be thoughtful about that. So don't teach everything and anything. Be selective, because you don't want to fire hose your teachers with the wrong tools, and they become so overloaded with tools that they just don't want to touch the other ones. So think about that, and then you can move on to strategies. So again, you're trying to move teachers more from this firefighting stage to the striving stage, and then to the thriving stage. And as you think about strategies for online learning, the first thing that often comes into play is asynchronous and synchronous. Um, I've never heard these two words more than I have in these past 8 weeks. This is an amazing infographic created by one of my friends, Tanya Leclerc, also a recent Google innovator. And she's in Korea. And so many of us have had to think about, okay, am I going to teach in an asynchronous mode, which means I'm not going to be live one-on-one at the same time with my students, or am I going to teach synchronously where they see me at the same time as I see them? Classrooms are synchronous. Uh, Face-to-face classrooms are synchronous. And so you need to think about how often you're going to be synchronous. It's pretty impossible, I think, to be able to be 5 hours synchronous online and to prep for it in the same way that we used to in a classroom. So you're going to have to find a good balance between the two and figure out what works in an asynchronous model. When we started off with the asynchronous model, I just told my teachers, 3-part lesson, start with a short little teaser, and then an activity, and then a review. But slowly we started to think about, quizzing tools that would work in an asynchronous model, or the fact that our students were just seeing 3 lines all the time is not very personable. So we started telling teachers, they just want your students just want to see your face. So even if you just do a 1-minute video introducing them to your house and your family, that is going to be really, really helpful to your students, and they need to see you. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about even in an asynchronous model. Um, are the students just seeing this talking head, or are they feeling like they're connecting with you? Um, and likewise, in synchronous, there's privacy issues that you need to think about. And right now, there's Zoom bombing, and you need to think about etiquette as students come on. Are they just going to be chatting with each other, and you've lost the whole half hour? So you need to start thinking about strategies to help establish routines. And then you need to think about how you're going to figure see the learning that's taking place in your students. So you want students to share with their voice, share with videos, share with their work, and offline and online activities, because you don't want them staring at a screen 5 hours a day. How can they learn to post chats on Google Classroom in an effective way where they're learning off of each other, like math talks? And are they creating, or are they just consuming information from you? Are they just watching YouTube videos all day long to learn? Or are you helping them to create on their own? So all of this is strategies for online learning that once you're into the striving and thriving stage, you really need to start thinking about. And I've put in here TPAC model and SAMR model, and these are just things that we, as technology integration, we need to think about. So please feel free to look those up. I don't have as much time to dive deep into it, but when we're talking about TPAC, it's technology, pedagogy, and then the content and knowledge mixed in together. And how are you doing that in a really strong way? So inevitably, as we move into online learning, and I know some of you talked about this, you move into assessment and feedback strategies. And I mean, we're heavy into this right now as we're heading into our Q3 report cards and trying to figure out how we're going to help our students to demonstrate their learning. We're an IB school, and our IB has just canceled all their exams, and we're trying to figure out how our internal examinations can look like. So inevitably, a lot of our teachers move right away to thinking, oh, how can I do a test? How can I do an exam to get the information I need? And how can we make sure that our students have good academic integrity, that the exam that we're doing is valid? This is where I love for all of us to continue to think about the fact that assessment and feedback does not always have to look like a test. It could be a Google form. It could be a conversation that's happening in Google Classroom, an assignment that's happening that students have submitted, and you're using a rubric to give them feedback, using voice feedback, using tools like Kaizena, or some tools even allow you to give a video feedback to your students, where you can highlight aspects of their work and then share it back with them. But there's many ways to do assessment and feedback, and this is where we have to remind teachers that there are a plethora of different types of ways that you can get an understanding of where student learning is at. They can create amazing books to demonstrate what they've learned about the coronavirus, or about about the war, World War II. Maybe you want students to do art. My daughter has been doing some really cool art with her teacher, fruit art, where she's been watching videos that the teacher actually created on doing fruit art, and she carved out the fruit and then she uploaded it. Her drama teacher did this really cool puppet unit, and she had to share uh, what that looked like to dub her brother who became the puppet, and she uploaded that. My son has been doing some great presentations about careers affected by COVID-19, and he did an online presentation for his teacher and for his classmates. So there's just a lot of different ways that you can see what the students have learned, and don't limit it to just online exams. Um, and finally, what is the most important, and why I put it as the largest item, is social emotional health and wellness. And this is going to be even more important the longer you're in online learning. And um, I hate to say it, but I don't know how long this will take. We thought it would be 2 weeks, and then it was 4 weeks, and then it was 6 weeks, and then it's 8 weeks. And the latest for our school is we don't anticipate opening until May or later. Um, the, the most grim have been people who've said, oh, we're not going to open till December. So we don't know how long this is going to be. But what I can tell you is the longer you're on online learning, the more taxing it is, more stressful it is. This week we're on spring break, or break from online learning, and it has been so nice. So set boundaries for yourself, take care of yourself. Um, if you're a leader, write emails to encourage your staff. My head of school sends out a Sunday poem every Sunday, just to help us to reflect and think about things that are actually important in life. Um, we as a leadership team, we have meetings with our parents online. We do large broadcasts with parents where they actually hear our voices. And we connect with our teachers. In the beginning, we had daily training every day. And I think we had over 120 to 150 staff online every day for a while. And I don't think they just came for the training. I think they came just to be able to see each other. That connection is so important. Care for each other. We have staff members who are quarantined, and we send care packages to them. We send videos. You need to find a balance between working and not working. I found that I used to always work on weekends, and now I really try to set boundaries on not working on the weekend. And for people who know me, that's amazing that I don't work as much on the weekend, and I don't look at my phone. According to my iPhone, it says my usage of iPhone has gone down on the weekends. And exercising and stretching, actually, this is a really good one. My colleague taught me. when you're staring at your screen a lot, just kind of doing this um, several times really helps much more than doing the pulling back of your elbows and um, stretching. This actually amazingly limbers up your neck and helps tons. Breathe, do yoga, spend time with your family. I highly recommend sock toss tournaments. If you don't know what that is, feel free to check out my Twitter handle, and just remember what are important things to you. And likewise, remind your students and your parents and your staff about that as well. Your students really need that social emotional support. We've been having counselors do training sessions for our parents to help them navigate how to be a teacher. I'm sure many of you will receive much love from your parents of how amazing you are. But you might also receive some frustrating emails from parents saying, hey, you're not doing enough. Why are you not doing it like this school or that class or this teacher? And you just have to remember everyone's really stressed at this point, and practice grace. So, last thing before I end is just I wanted to remind all of you that you are not alone. You are part of this huge community of other educators who are so giving and compassionate. I have not seen greater amount of generosity and collaboration than I have these past 8 weeks. And I, rather than the 3 R's, I thought we'd use the 3 C's. So rather than reuse, recycle, and uh, reduce, reuse, and recycle, I have connect, collaborate, and contribute. Connect with other people, other educators. I highly recommend Twitter. There's just so much sharing. I posted questions and received a mountain of replies immediately. Ask questions, learn from others. Remember, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's so many training videos out there. You do not have to create one for your students. You do not have to create one for your teachers. You can actually share certain videos with them and say, hey, check this out. And just give attribution to the people you connect with. Bookmark, I highly recommend the bookmark tool in Twitter, or bookmark them on your browser. But when you see something good, bookmark it and you'll come back to it over and over again. And collaborate, work together. If you have other grade level leaders, take turns planning lessons. You don't all have to plan the same lesson. If you're doing morning greeting, how nice that my class can have another teacher give them the morning greeting that day. Crowdsource and remix other people's work. People are so generous right now, and it's important to celebrate the good work that everybody's doing all the time. And 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 finally, contribute. Something that you think is so simple is going to be amazing to others, as as uh, as shared in sorry, I lost my thought, but there's an amazing video that talks about that. And yeah, share your ideas. You'd be amazed at how many people don't know it and probably can benefit from your learning. Blog, podcast with other people, share. It's really important that we all contribute our learning. If you have lessons, share it with a colleague. Don't be an island at this time. These are just some examples of people that I highly recommend to follow. Kim Cafino right over here has some amazing podcasts that she's been doing with educators who are much further ahead than where you are currently at, because there are people from Thailand, Korea, just sharing their lessons learned. And I highly recommend those podcasts. Jennifer Wathell's the one that had that beginning infographic that I shared, and she keeps posting up really cool infographics, and she has a great training as well that she's been sharing for free. Dana Watts has some really great tools of lessons learned that she's posted up, as well as if you're an administrator, teacher, or leader, things to consider and checklists posted up. And and there's a bunch of ones here that I've put up just that who have been posting a lot of Google resources that might be helpful to all of you. Um, and Google themselves have some amazing tools. This new hub is for teachers. It's called Teach from Home, as well as Edu on Air, where they've been doing, I think, weekly podcasts, webcasts, where Jenny McGarrah has been hosting these online on air resources, all free, that you can go to. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Sethi, who's also a Google innovator, who has these amazing tutorials that he posts. They're really high caliber and quality. And if you go to YouTube, you can find his tutorials. So that's it that I have. Any questions?
Oh, Sandra, just so wonderful. Just hearing you, and just I feel so much more relaxed, and I think everybody watching feels the same. We do have some questions coming into the chat, and we'll open it up to more. It is midnight for you, Sandra, so although you
Mhm.
don't work on your weekends, we recognize you are working extra hours. If you wouldn't mind sticking around for a little bit and answering some questions, that would be fabulous. You're okay with this?
Yeah, no problem. My husband's actually working right now too.
Oh my goodness. Well, Sandra, so one of the questions that came in is talking about students, specifically our higher grades, that haven't done these types of assessments. They're used to just the multiple choice quizzes and whatnot. Like, how do we set them up for success, or what advice do you have helping them move into this new form of assessment?
Mhm. I don't think necessarily um, they're new, but I would just say start with something small. Like go with that simplicity, um, uh, that that idea of keeping things simple. If you're trying something like, let's say you're a science teacher and you're trying to figure out how to do a lab with your students, start off with something very very simple that they can do, and then and try it out and see how that goes. And if it works out, then modify it. And I like to think of it like design thinking, where you don't you put out your minimal viable product and see how that goes, test it out, and if it works well, then you tweak it um, a little bit to make it even better. If it doesn't work, then you scrap it and try something new, and that's okay. You're just putting out your minimal viable product out there first. So that would be my recommendation.
And I love that too, Sandra. We've heard of so many situations where teachers feel like they have to, send a whole package or like give something complete, and it really is overwhelming our students. And so I love that idea of just start small, little snippets is fabulous. Another question we have is talking specifically about the younger students. What advice do you have as far as helping set parents up to set up our youngest students for success? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, again, make sure you're very clear in your instructions. And if you have kids at home, just have them try it, your lesson as well. But whatever you give to your students, I would go through it. Things that you think work well um, might not work out well once you try it. And the other thing is to consider what technology they might have. It might work really well on the computer, but it might not work very well on an iPad, which is what your students have, or it might not work very well on a phone, which is what your students have. Be lenient with timing. Um, it's not, they might not submit it until the next day. Call them up. Call your parents up and say, "Hey, how are things going? What can I help you with?" Your parents might not know math, and maybe you're teaching them math, and you can actually walk through some of that with them. Um, and uh, give them lots of resources and tools that they can go to. And if you need to teach it again, teach it again. Just start small and connect with them, see how they're doing, what can you do to help. And you're just like a teacher that normally in a classroom, you're going to know how to adjust once you make that connection with them.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question is about um, events that are being canceled. So spring productions, graduations. These are things that our students, that's, that's everything they've been looking for. How have you guys at Keystone been able to navigate that?
Yeah, truthfully, a lot of things did get canceled. Like we have every year something called an experiential learning trip, and our students weren't able to go on these trips. But you can pivot and you can think of different ways to make those things happen. So, for example, a week ago, we had a poetry event. Our students actually initiated it, our secondary students, and they were raising money for the people in Wuhan, and we used a virtual a video conferencing tool. The students each shared a poem, and then to participate, they paid money. So we still have events happening. We just had our big assembly, school assembly. Um, we're as staff still trying to do social events. So we've had uh, thoughts of doing online trivia nights with our staff, or um, online movie nights, or um, using Flipgrid to do sing a song competitions. We have house competitions that are still going on. We're trying to do as much as we can to be creative without overwhelming our teachers and our students. If the student initiates something, then we embrace them and support them fully. Mm-hmm.
And that's so great. And that keyword is pivot, right?
Mm-hmm.
We met, it was a teacher that was in one of our workshops last week, Nick, and I think you're from Waterloo Region, Nick, but I know somewhere in Ontario, but Nick's The Spring production is now going to be live streamed via Google Meet, and that they're busy sort of just pivoting and like, we can do this. And it's
Mm-hmm.
super exciting. So great advice there. Another question that's coming up so often, meet bombing, Zoom bombing.
Mm-hmm.
We've got these people that are finding their ways into our classrooms, and it's really hard to get rid of them at this point. Or we also have this worry that students are going to go back into the classroom when we're not there.
Mm-hmm.
Help us understand kind of how you guys are dealing with those sorts of things.
Yeah, we didn't have the Zoom bombing situation. I think as unfortunately more people come on, you see all the good, but then there's also the bad that comes on, and you can't always keep your students completely in a bubble. At some point, you need to teach them good digital citizenship. And in the beginning of the year, we often give out a family tech agreement that we've been focusing more on our secondary in this, and we actually now brought it lower down to our primary because of the online learning. But it's an agreement that helps parents to walk through what is good digital citizenship with um, uh, their own children. And so, if you remember that relationship of parents, teachers, and school, this is where that relationship is really important. So the school created the family learning agreement. The teacher might communicate that with the parent. The parent's going to sit down with the student, and really, it's important that they establish good routines at home. Make sure that the computer's in a place that everyone can see. How are you going to make sure you're using it for good and for learning, as opposed to spending all day on it playing video games or just chatting with your friends? And then talk about consequences. We as a school have consequences for if they're being inappropriate on a chat, and we've actually created right from the beginning, shared with the students, this is our agreement for online learning. You need to follow that otherwise there's some consequences that take place, and it's important that students understand the consequences and why we have those consequences in place. And so the digital citizenship is even more important than ever, and it's important that all of us help with that.
Wise words, and you're right. Like we're just navigating a new world, and we have to re-envision things, take them as they come. And this has been unbelievably helpful for me, and I'm certain for those that are watching us too. I recognize it is after midnight for you. We are, just those of you watching, we are doing this all over again this evening here in Canada, tomorrow morning for Sandra. So you need to get some sleep. But Sandra, this call focused on Google tools that can help us. But Sandra's actually working in a Microsoft environment, and so she has some other strategies using Teams and OneNote and the O365 tools that are going to help our Microsoft educators here in Canada, and I mean all over the world. So I think they're going to post that in the chat, the link to our conversation this evening, Sandra, which I can't wait for. There's still lots of questions that were coming in. And I know we aren't able to answer them all, but anybody can reach out to help@edtechteam.ca. We can either help you out from EdTech Team, we can connect you with Sandra. Again, Sandra, I cannot tell you just what an honor it is to be able to have an hour and 8 minutes of your time tonight. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you on behalf of educators trying to navigate this. We're in it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
We got this, everyone.